Are you struggling to make your first 100K or next? Are you pretending you're successful but barely getting by? Are you tired of comparing yourself to millionaires and billionaires who make it look so easy? Welcome to First 100K, the #1 entrepreneur voice in America. I talk about the important things that no one else is talking about, like how to make your first $100,000, because I believe this is where 90% of entrepreneurs get stuck. And I tackle the mental game of entrepreneurship that we all secretly struggle with but won't admit. My guests are successful entrepreneurs who share their mistakes, their #1 fears, their daily habits, and their superpowers that push them over the 100K mark. I'm your host, your coach, your friend, Joseph Warren. I'm also a 10-time failed entrepreneur and the owner of 2 co-working spaces here in Tampa, Florida. This show was created for you, the entrepreneur who's pushing to break through the elusive 100K milestone. Wherever you are in your business, you're just 100K away. Do you wish growing a business was easier? Are you feeling frustrated that it's taking so long to make your first 100K? I used to feel the same way until I discovered the one thing that was missing. It wasn't more marketing tips or strategies. It wasn't reading more business books, and it wasn't learning more stuff. I could show you what's holding you back and blocking your success if you like. Typical side effects include higher income, peace of mind, loving relationships, real connection with God, freedom from addictions, purpose, fulfillment, and a brand new lifestyle. It all starts by scheduling a spiritual clarity call with me to get clarity on what you want right now in your life and to see if we want to work together. Visit josephwarren.net/possibilities to learn more. That's josephwarren.net/possibilities. Today, my featured guest is Poirier, and he was raised by a single mother. He grew up in a small town, barely graduated high school. A teacher even gave him a 49+1. He battled anxiety and hypochondria in his early 20s. So he struggled just like you, Startup Nation. Since those days, he has become a multiple-time TEDx speaker, the host of 3 top-rated interview shows, founder of The Speaking Program, and he has been featured in multiple television specials. He's a columnist for Entrepreneur Magazine, Forbes Magazine. He's also interviewed over, ready, 5,000 of the world's top leaders while building a multiple 6-figure business himself in a very niche market. That's what we're going to speak about today. How did he do it? How can you apply those same skill sets and strategies into your business to hit your first 100K this year? He is also the founder of the newly launched Blue Talks Live. So we're going to get into that with him. You can find him at thatspeakerguy.com, thatspeakerguy.com. Corey, welcome to your first 100K. Go ahead and fill in some of the gaps in that intro, would you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess on one hand, somebody asked me recently, what does the 49+1 mean? Because I guess in their school system, it wasn't necessarily a 50%. And in our school system, it was. So what that means, the gap there, is that I didn't really technically graduate high school. And so how that comes into play is one of the teachers gave me that number to let me know that he had to give me the 1%. And I don't know if he bumped me up to 49 or if I literally, that's pretty good. I should have bought a lottery ticket if I landed right on 49. I wonder if he gave me, like if I was 47, he gave me the 49+1 to get me to the passing point. But I'll tell you, Joseph, that's a very significant moment in my life, because it basically, it was like he was trying to give me this thing. You don't get to coast by in life. I'm giving you a gimme, but it's up to you to decide what you do with that. But also, it's that moment where you realize truly that you didn't officially graduate high school. But the other side to it is, it reminds me of that quote that I've said many times, and I'm sure I've heard from somebody else, that it's irrelevant where you start. It's what you do with it and where you end. And not even where you end, but where you get on the way that matters. And so here's a guy who, as you mentioned, grew up in a small town, single mother, so we didn't have a lot of money, didn't really graduate high school. and I was able to still make something work. And so it reminds me that it's, it's not just about school smarts, for instance. It's also, just because you've had a setback doesn't mean it's the end of the world. I will add, because it wouldn't be full disclosure not to add, but I did go to business college after that. And I went 3 years roughly. Like I went one full year program, then I went to separate courses for a year, and then I went to an entrepreneurial program. But why I bring that up is actually all three of those, I did in excess of 80%, if you go with percentages, in everything I did. And what was the difference? I was passionate about business. I wasn't passionate about high school. So the full disclosure is, it's not like I'm saying, it's like somebody said, I didn't graduate high school and then look what I was able to do. I'm saying I did go to business college, but it still was the thing of that I almost didn't get into it because of the fact that I barely graduated. And I wouldn't have got into university, obviously, with a 49+1.
No, definitely not. So I really get that. And Startup Nation, my good friend now, on my other show, he was just on, Tim Story, big spiritual time leader, especially on the West Coast. He's considered pastor to the stars, Oprah's, and all those, Robert Downey Jr., et cetera, some of his clients. Anyway, he was just on that show, so go check that out. But he speaks about, your setback is your comeback. And really what that looks like. And you just spoke about that, Corey, that it doesn't matter where you started or you were set back in life from the beginning, you get to choose your comeback. You get to create that Startup Nation. So when that happens, when that shift will happen for you, is when you finally surrender all the excuses, all the reasons why you can't, and you get decisive and choose why you can. And you say, this is what I'm going to do no matter what. I don't know how yet, but I'll figure it out. And I'm going to surround myself with other people that are of that mindset. So I just want to speak that inspiration into you. Corey, share something personal about you that very few people in your business life actually know.
So one of the things that I share every now and then, but I certainly don't share it frequently, and I haven't shared it far and wide, is that for a number of years, i.e. about 2 years, I battled generalized anxiety. And that actually became hypochondria for for 2 years roughly again. So about 4 years, because obviously when you have hypochondria, you still have the anxiety. So for about 4 years, I battled the two of them. And I don't think a lot of people would know that. And not because I won't share it if somebody brings it up, because I think stuff like anxiety and mental health, I think we need to probably speak it and talk about it more rather than it being such a negative stigma. But yeah, so I would say that's a thing that a lot of people don't know about my backstory.
I really get that. And mental health, I think in the entrepreneurship space, is a conversation that needs to be had more of, because there's an epidemic suicide rate amongst entrepreneurs, right? There's a lot of stress in building a business. There's a lot of anxiety. And if you don't know where to place it or how to deflect it, it's going to weigh you down, and eventually you're going to act out in your life in all types of addictions, or worst case scenario, you taking your own life. So I really get that. I think that's powerful and a powerful conversation. All right, let's get into your story, Corey. So what's your existing business right now? What do you specifically do? What's the problem you help people with? Who do you help? And what's the solution? What do you got?
Wow. So I have multiple.
I'm going to give you 60 seconds for that answer, because I need you to be concise and know your stuff.
Yeah, well, and I have multiple businesses. So I'm going to take one. I'll take the core business that has been constant through the last 18 years. And that's speaking to clients who typically will bring me in, mostly corporate and association type clients at their events. They'll bring me in to, it depends what their problem is, but they'll bring me in to, let's say, talk about why they had a bad year last year and what they can do about it. So essentially I'll come in, I'll do a survey beforehand because I want to make sure I'm personalizing it to them and their experience. I'll come in and speak at their event. They'll pay me to speak at the event. And I'll essentially help their staff get through whatever that problem was. So my solution is to offer them strategy, but also motivation to turn the corner.
Okay, got it. So what I'm hearing you say is you're kind of and I'm putting my own words to it, but you're a turnaround speaker.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're a speaker
absolutely.
that comes in and helps a company turn around, whether it just be from last year's results to this year's or a big turnaround, right? But you're that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you used that terminology because people love to say motivational speaker. And I struggle with that all the time because I'm not just there to get you excited. I'm not just there even to get you to take action. I'm there also to show you what the action is. And not all motivational speakers do that. So that's why I like the term, I like the difference in terminology, turnaround speaker. I never heard that before. So
That's because I just created it. I
I
just
know.
coined it for you, and I'm going to gift it to you. There you are, sir. You can pay
Awesome.
me
Well, thank you so much.
royalties or not. It's totally up to you. Okay, so Corey, when you first started the business, I want you to go back in time, your speaker business. There's a lot of speakers listening to the show right now, right? That's their business model, is getting on stages, bringing the value to those audiences, but they don't know how to monetize it. Many speakers, as you know, suck at monetizing their skill set. So give me your top 3 tips or strategies that you use and that Startup Nation can use, whether it be in their speaking business or their other service type of business. What do you got?
First thing I would say, let's say if it's their speaking business. Now you can use this in other ones, but I'm going to say speaking is where this really comes to life. What I did early on, people ask me what was the game-changing moment, and to this point, I heard a number that less than 5% of speakers are making 6 figures speaking, and less than 1% are making 7 figures. Where that came from is Lisa Nichols. Her company did a study, and that's what they found out. And so here, to your point, I didn't realize, Joseph, I started a speaking program helping people because people were coming to me so often saying, how are you getting paid? So here's the one game changer in that business for me, was I started handing out my evaluation forms. These got to be handwritten evaluation forms, not to send it in digitally, because you'll only get 5% of those back. So what I would do is I would go to events, and it took a while to craft the exact form I use. I would go to events, I would bring my evaluation form, get permission beforehand, hand them out, and at the end of the event, I would get people to fill them out. One of the questions on that event says, do you know of others who could bring me in for a similar topic or a similar talk to the one I delivered today? If so, can we follow up with you to find out who that is? That one thing brings in, still to this day, about 30% of my bookings. So, but here's the thing. When we talk about how can you use that, whether it's speaking or your business, whether you're looking to get paid speaking engagements or whether you're looking to actually bring in business, there's nothing stopping you, regardless of the company, or say you're a realtor, of going out and doing a talk at an event and filling out evaluation forms, getting feedback. And by the way, the benefit to this too is you're getting tons of feedback to make sure you do it better the next time and all that kind of stuff. So that would be one thing, is find a way to get feedback and get positive feedback. And that way you get potential clients in the future, but you also know what to do better next time. That's one.
I like it. I like it. What's your number 2?
And so I see somebody else is coming in the door here. So I'm going to get that taken care of too. Sorry.
So Startup Nation, Corey right now is actually moving his entire office as we speak. I see people just bobbing behind him on the video camera here. But this is the life of entrepreneurship, is you show up, you keep your word, you're in integrity, regardless of what's going on around you. Go ahead, Corey.
100%. So number 2, I would say, is delivering, and this one here can apply to any business, and it's very strategic, even though some people might think it's not at all. They might just think it's just something you do or what have you, but is delivering massive value for somebody else before you take any value. And so let's talk about what that looks like in real life. It could be as simple as, people often ask me, how did I get this person on my show? How did I interview this person? What I've done is I go to their, let's say, social media presence, let's say Twitter, and I'll tag them in, and I'll maybe post something from their book and say, I love what Gary Vee said here. I love what he said about this. Or I'll say, if somebody, maybe it's not a big name, I'll say, just thought you might like this article based on what they teach and what they speak on or what they share. So, but their big takeaway there is to try to find a way to give value to others. Now, if you want to get in the good graces of a big influencer, then start sharing stuff of theirs and tagging them in, saying, I love what Gary Vee said here. And I'm just using him as the example. But you can do this in any aspect of your business. Give first. It could be as simple as sending a copy of a book and saying, hope you enjoy this book, and here's what you can take from this book. And so that's another thing I would say, is find a way to give first, and you'll find that people will be tripping over themselves to try to give back at some point. Now, here's the cool part. You and I chatted about this. If the give back doesn't happen, who cares? You're still giving first. Why? There's no bad to that. Why wouldn't you want to give to somebody else? But my experience is it always comes back.
Yeah, so I really like what you said there, the way you positioned it, which is deliver massive value before you take any value. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very important. And a lot of people don't add that in because it's almost like taking value is a bad thing. But you're actually saying, no, like, of course, we're all out for self, right? At the end of the day, you could pretend you're not and you're lying, right? But we all like, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? So you're showing up and you're saying, hey, I know value is going to come my way, but I'm not going to intentionally take it until after I've delivered so much value. Then I'm going to do my ask. That's when I'm going to say, hey, by the way, you probably don't know I'm doing this. Would you be interested in coming on my show? Boom. But now they already see, man, this is a guy of value. This guy just gave to me. You know what? Law of reciprocity. All right, let me jump on his show.
Absolutely. And I would go one step further, and this is a personal choice because we know how much work's involved. But I would say even starting a podcast or starting a video show is a way, as you just said, you can give value because you can invite them onto your show. You can find a way to help them share their message. But the end result, as you know, Joseph, is you'll connect with people on no other scale, in my experience, than when you give them value in this kind of intimate capacity. And so you'll get to know them really well. They might become your best client. I mean, there's so many things that come from that. But the reason I say choose wisely is because it's not for everyone. You know, I had Jordan Harbinger on the show one time, who, of course, a lot of people would know either The Art of Charm he used to have or the Jordan Harbinger Show, one of the biggest podcasters around. I asked him what advice he would give to upcoming podcasters. He said, don't start a podcast. He said, if you knew how much work went into it, he said, if I knew how much work went into it, I'd probably start on YouTube first because I could get a bigger audience in as much time as I put into this on a YouTube or another social video platform. So I say this only because I say this is a game changer. It can be a game changer, but no, there's a lot of work going into running a show like this. So you have to be willing to commit if you're going to do that, but it can be a sound strategy.
All right. What do you got? What's your number 3 top strategy for Startup Nation right now?
So I'm torn between two of them. The one I'll give is more on the personal side, but maybe that's good because the other two are more business applicable, if you will. Keep feeding your mind long after you think you should stop feeding your mind. And so what I've discovered, even in interviewing the 5,000, as we said, plus high achievers, is the one thing they have in common is they're all committed to lifelong learning. And so I mentioned him earlier, I'll mention him again, but Jack Canfield shared one time, he was talking about being at a Tony Robbins event. And I brought it up to another guest who knew Jack after that show. And he said, yeah, it's funny you say that because I was at an event with Jack and Tony. Tony was speaking, rather. Jack was in the audience taking notes like crazy, filling up a journal. Now, this is when Jack is, by the way, past mid-60s. He said there was a guy beside Jack at another table, 19 roughly, looking at his phone the whole time, not paying attention to Tony, and then looking over at Jack and shaking his head. And he said, what a visual. Jack, who probably doesn't need this information anymore, but still feels he does, is still learning. And this 19-year-old shut up learning. Who do you think is going to still be more successful than the next year? So my point of that, Joseph, is that even though it's not a business strategy per se, what I would say is make sure you have an informal or formal learning plan to make sure you continue to feed your mind. And so for me, every day, I have this right here next to me, the Brendan Burchard Performance Planner. And in it, I write down basically read books. And I have 2 books I'm working on right now. The 10th Insight, which is the follow-up to the Celestine Prophecy, and The Magic of Thinking Big. And I'm always usually reading 2 at the same time so I don't get bored because that's the way my mind works. But the point of that is, and I'll read a chapter and a chapter of each one. And so the read books part is I strike it off. I know I'm going to remember to do it, but I note it there. It's part of my plan each day to make sure I feed my mind. And that could be watching a TED Talk, could be listening to a podcast, but you should spend, in my opinion, at least 20 minutes every day feeding your mind. And if you do that, you'll find that somebody, I think it was Brian Tracy said, if you do that, drive 20 minutes each way to work listening to a podcast, let's say, then within, I think it's something like he said, I can't remember the numbers now, but something like 4 years or 8 years, you'll have like a university degree just by listening 20 minutes a day. So that's a business strategy, in my opinion, because the stronger you get in terms of your mindset, the better equipped you're going to be to get to that 6 figures or blow past it.
All right. So I also was going to say that, right? I definitely think this is a business strategy, Startup Nation. And so many times we think business strategy is only doing things externally, outside, right? Out here, but not doing the inner work. And I think when you do the inner work, right? This is why I do spiritual coaching is CEOs of top companies, they come to me and hire me, not because I'm better at them than business, far from it. They're way better at me than business, in business than I am, way past. But I am able to help them tap into what is stopping them on the inside from really pouring out into this spiritual reservoir or overflow. Well, when we're able to unlock that or pop the cork, so to speak, guess what happens? They show up completely different and powerfully in their businesses. So like you couldn't have a more impactful business strategy, in my opinion, than doing the bleeping inner work on yourself. That's the game changer for everything. What shows up for you in that, Corey?
Oh, I love that. And I'll add in that I read a lot of people don't know this. You said earlier, I share this publicly, but a lot of people don't necessarily hear me say it because it depends. I might share it in front of a live audience, but if they're not there, they wouldn't hear it. I didn't read my first book until I was 27, which was How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. And so I tried 3 books in school, the ones they recommend, To Kill a Mockingbird, Death of a Salesman. And I found my way to get through those classes without reading those books. And then I tried Stephen King's Cujo. And it wasn't that it was scary. The movie was terrifying, but the book wasn't scary to me. It just didn't pull me in. Quit after a chapter. Then I didn't read another book. And the funny part is I used to say to my mother, I'm going to write a book. And she goes, well, I think you need to read one first. And so at 27, I read the first book cover to cover. And the reason I bring that up is because when people say what were the pivotal moments where everything changed, and I'm talking, by the way, personally and professionally, that was one of those moments whenever I finally read that book, because to the point, I said, I'm reading 2 books at once right now. I couldn't read a book cover to cover. I read the How to Win Friends over a weekend, and it pulled me in so much that I read it again a second time. And I've often joked it's the first and second book I've ever read in my life. And then the third book, by the way, was Think and Grow Rich that somebody recommended. Those aren't bad starting points. If you're going to start late, go in hard. Think and Grow Rich and How to Win Friends are pretty powerful. And by the way, I don't know if there's a synchronicity here, but both books were written in 1937.
Look at that. That's your year.
I guess.
All right. So Startup Nation, we're speaking with Corey Poirier. You can find him at thatspeakerguy.com, thatspeakerguy.com. He's sharing his top 3 tips and strategies for you to make your first 100K this year. Whether you're in the speaking business or another business, these are transferable strategies. So strategy number 1, he says, is hand out evaluation forms after your talks or after your solution, whatever it is your product is. Make sure you're getting that feedback from your clients. And in your evaluation form, always ask for the referral. Who else do you know that may get value from what you just witnessed or experienced with me? That's critical. Number 2, he says, deliver massive value before you take any value for yourself. That is also key. And number 3, keep feeding your mind long after you think you've had enough. At least 20 minutes a day is the recipe. All right, so I'm going to ask you now, Corey, we're going to jump into our hustle round. This is where I'm going to ask you 10 quick fire questions. You're going to have 3 seconds to answer each. Don't overthink it. It's just for fun. Are you ready?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, fantastic. But before we do, see what I did there? Intrigue frame. All right, before we do, go ahead and share with us how much gross revenue did your business do in the past 12 months approximately?
Approximately, I'm going to say between 350 and 4.
350 to 400,000, Startup Nation. Well done. Really great job. That's fantastic. And what are you tracking for the next 12 months? What's the target there?
Well, okay, I'm gonna tell you 2 numbers. One is where I'd like to see a minimum, and then the one that I've just spoken with my girlfriend and told her. So, so the target for what I've told her is over 7, so over $1 million. Minimum I'd like to see is 800. And that sounds, by the way, that sounds very optimistic, doubling in 1 year.
Sure.
But I've added a new business model, which is the Blue Talks. And even just within that, even what we've done in the last 3 months would show that that's very, not just optimistic, it's very realistic.
So you're tracking it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Congratulations on that. That's a great goal to double what you're doing, right? And Startup Nation, don't miss what he just said there. He put in the processes and systems in order to scale. Right? It's not just wishful thinking. Oh, I really hope we double. If I just apply twice the effort, we're going to double. Or if I just 10x my effort, we're going to double. No disregard to Grant Cardone, but you also got to put in the systems and the processes so that you can double.
Absolutely.
Very, very important. All right. First question. What's your favorite thing about being an entrepreneur?
Freedom.
What's your least favorite thing?
That one's tough. Least favorite thing is the long days.
What are you most afraid of?
That's tough. I don't have a big fear. I'm not a big fear guy. I would just say that I'm not, that I'm going to get complacent and not care as much.
Yes, yes. Sometimes we get smug and complacent, like, look what I did. Look at me. And then we kind of dial back on the gas pedal. And that's a very dangerous place to be. What did you spend way too much time doing your first year in business?
Chasing clients. And I say that, I'll say it, chasing revenue, meaning not just chasing, trying to like go after too many clients and put, go all in on it, but also trying to chase the payment, like trying to get the payment immediately because you need cash flow early on. But I think I could have done more business if I wasn't always trying to chase the payment and the receivable and stuff like that.
Yeah, I get that one. What secret fear do you have about people?
Uh, that they're rooting for us to fail, even though the ones that are telling us they're rooting for us to succeed are actually inherently rooting for us to fail.
Sometimes they are, right? Because it'll make them feel better about their lack of effort. Yeah, I get that. And if you're being fully transparent right now, we all struggle with something as humans. What are you struggling with right now, whether it be personally or professionally?
I think we have a 2-year-old, and I think I'm struggling with us never getting a full 100,000% full night's sleep. And I'm lucky more than some. I don't discount that because I get to travel. So I get every now and then I'll get to a hotel for a couple of nights and I get a full night's sleep. My girlfriend hasn't had a full night's sleep in 2.5 years, but I'm home more these days, a lot more than normal. And yeah, not getting enough sleep. That's the
I
big
get that. And that impacts your day big time and your business. What do you wish you had learned sooner in your business?
that you should start with more cash flow than you actually do.
Mm,
No matter how much you have, I think you always should start with more. I mean, obviously, there's a variable. If somebody's starting a tiny business that costs $1,000 a month and they have $1 million plus sitting there, then that's different. But you know what I mean?
I
99% of
do.
businesses, I would say, start with too low cash flow. And I wish I would have knew that sooner, and I would have maybe waited a little longer.
Yeah, that makes sense. What's a new habit you want to form?
The 5 a.m. club. I'm not saying I'm going to get there, but I would like to form it. That's a goal.
I like that you've made it a club. It just sounds like I want in. All right.
I,
What's
you know what? I have to edit. That's a Robin Sharma book. So I
yeah,
didn't. I took that from somewhere.
there you go. What's a bad habit you want to break?
uh, the opposite one. So, not truthfully, I mean, usually my days start around 8, but I'd like to break that habit. I mean, we just told you what the problem was, the not getting full night's sleep, but I'd like to break that habit and at least get to 7 and then 6 and 5 as a process
Well,
over time.
I'm rooting for you on that. So pick 3 words to describe who you are now.
Passionate, for sure. I would say ambitious, and I would say a split between reliable or loyal to a fault.
Mm. Pick 3 words to describe who you were your first year in this business.
Well, I'm going to use anxiety because I talked about that, and I mean, I'm sure I still carried some of that, being anxious in your first year. I would say I don't know what the word for this is, but I was too in the business. I was living in the business rather than on the business. But I don't know what
Consumed.
consumed. Yeah, let's use that. And maybe to some degree um, overwhelmed, but by my own doing because I was so passionate. I just kept going, like I was the Energizer Bunny.
Yeah, Startup Nation, too much passion sometimes is not a good thing, right? You got to make sure you're always filling yourself back up, right? Otherwise, you become what I call a spiritual supply pipe, right? You run out, but you don't leave anything for yourself.
If I can share something, Joseph, this
Go
just
ahead,
popped in
real
my head.
quick.
But Lisa Nichols, I mentioned, we interviewed her not that long ago, and she said, and I love this. She said, you shouldn't start giving to others and giving back to others until when you're filling that jug up and you have a saucer underneath, you fill from the saucer. People always
That's
say when it's full, no, you wait till it's overflowing.
That's
Anyway, I love
exactly
it.
it, right? And in my business, I call it spiritual reservoir. And
Yes,
so many people, they go out there as a spiritual supply pipe and they're trying to pour into others and nothing's left for themselves. And they eventually fall short. And then, boom, they start acting out in their life. And this is where you see like really successful people just crash and burn because they weren't at overflow yet. And they
absolutely.
weren't pouring out from the extra. They were pouring out from, what they needed for their own self, their own oxygen they were giving away. Very dangerous place. Last question. If you could come back to life after you died, Corey, look your family, your kid in the eye and give them only one piece of advice, what would you say to them?
Live on purpose.
Live on purpose, Startup Nation. Corey, any final wisdom? What's the one thing you want my listener to know about making their first 100K this year?
This is a tough one. I would say that I'm gonna give a double-edged sword. It's easier than you think, and it's harder than you think, because it really comes down to not just systemizing it and figuring out what am I doing wrong and all those kind of things, but it also, this is the hardest part. It means that you have to start saying no to some things so that you can say yes to other things. So the wording I would use on it is say no to most of the things that don't move the needle, so you can say yes to a few things that do. But it takes people so long to discover this. So you'll start getting busier as you get closer to 100K. And then most people will just say yes to everything and try to figure out how to do it all. So what I'm going to say is figure out how to say no. First of all, what do you say no to? Then how do you actually say no to people? But the more no's you say, the better and stronger yeses you're going to be able to say. And what I've seen in these interviews with these highest of achievers is they say no. And I don't know the number, Joseph, so I'm just going to throw a number out. I would say on average 10 times minimum more than the average person says no.
I agree with that so much. And I've seen the biggest shifts in my growth as a business owner and my revenues, et cetera, when I am constantly saying no and rejecting people and projects and offers. And I only say yes to what moves the needle, as you said. Only say yes to what moves the needle, Startup Nation. That's the key. All right. What's the best way for Startup Nation to get in touch with you if they choose?
So the best options would be two places. One is, you said it already, that's speakerguy.com. That's really easy. And why I mention that one is you can get my social media links, all that other kind of funky stuff there. See my TEDx talks, articles are there, stuff like that. The other option, which is really a freebie, so that one, you might want to go there first. But it's a book called The Book of Public Speaking that I wrote to teach people not just how to speak in public, but how to influence. And so I like to give that away as a digital copy to listeners of the show. And if you want to grab that, easy website to remember, thebookofpublicspeaking.com.
Love it. And Startup Nation, if you want to check out the blog that we wrote for this show, normally we take this interview with Corey, and now we're going to go and write it out in written word for you, because I know some of you love the spoken word, you love listening to the show, but then others of you love reading it. And Corey spoke about reading today, right? And how valuable that is. So if you want that, go to josephwarren.net/first 100K blog. No spaces in between, no hyphens. So josephwarren.net/first 100K blog, or just check the nav bar and the drop down and just click on that blog, and you're going to get this show, but with a deeper story to it, right? We just kind of embellish what Corey spoke about. So Corey, great job today. Thank you for joining me on your first 100K. You're a rock star, my friend. I wish you God's love, peace, and joy in your life, my friend.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Joseph. And the feeling is 100% mutual.
Thank you. Cheers. Startup Nation, you cannot show up authentically in your business without building faith in your business. If you want to have that conversation on the faith side of things, go check out my other podcast called Broken Catholic. On that show, I interview all different guests about why the world isn't working right now. Plus, I tackle unspeakable topics that you may secretly struggle with, but won't admit. We got to get your faith right to get your business right. Go to brokencatholic.com. I'm Joseph Warren, and you were made for greatness. So stop being a wuss and start being a winner. Have a blessed day, and I'll see you right back here next week.